Firstly, those comments by the Russian Prime Minister, Dmitry Medvedev, that any hope of improving relations with the US has ended. Mr. Trump is a, quote, incompetent player. His administration has demonstrated complete impotence. And then the president saying that relations are at an all-time low and blaming Congress. Your response?
Blame for the relationship lies directly with Putin. I mean, he tries to interfere in our elections. He invades Crimea, messing with Ukraine, threatening other countries. You know, it's his issue, not ours. So I think the blame is misplaced.
You write in your book about the, quote, sugar high of popularism, that you can win elections that way but not govern. It's not a governing philosophy. Is that what is happening, though, with the Trump administration and the Republican Party?
Well, I do think that the party has given in, and this started happening long before President Trump came along, but this kind of, yeah, as you mentioned, sugar high of populism. You know, it's easier for a politician to point to a shuttered factory, for example, and blame the Chinese or the Mexicans for taking those jobs when the real answer is far more complex than that. It's automation, it's mechanization, it's globalization. But the way to respond to that is through job training programs or something else, but not to tell them that their jobs are going to come back if we just get rid of these free trade agreements.
You make these warnings about popularism and the party going off course, but it has to be said there was an analysis on the 538 website that you voted for Trump policies 93.5% of the time, including repealing Obamacare without replacing it, and then the much criticized skinny repeal. You know, you wrote about the risks of a sloppy repeal of Obamacare, but didn't you just vote for that?
Well, when you look at the votes that the Senate has cast since the president's been in office, in the first 6 months of any administration, almost all the Senate does is approve the president's personnel. So I voted yes, because I think a president ought to put together his cabinet. I've departed from the president in terms of Russia sanctions. I've supported him when he's done things like name Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court or has tackled regulations. So I will agree with this president when I think he's right and oppose him when I think he's wrong. I think he has been wrong on free trade. His talk about NAFTA and in the campaign talking about getting rid of it. I'm glad that that's moved to renegotiation. I hope we simply modernize it and move ahead. But like any Republican or Democratic president, myself and I suppose other senators will keep our franchise and not be a rubber stamp.
You also write, quote, we observe the unfolding drama along with the rest of the country passively, all but saying someone should do something without seeming to realize that someone is us. What are you suggesting should be done? What are you doing?
Well, with regard to separation of powers and making sure that we each provide a check on the other, I think Congress needs to step up to the plate. I think a lot of us had a problem with the timing and the rationale for the firing of Jim Comey. I know that myself and others have spoken up recently when it's been talked about that the AG might go, and that might be some kind of precursor to getting rid of the special counsel. I think the Congress needs to stand up for the institutions of government. When somebody degrades our intelligence agencies and says that they're simply wrong about Russian interference, for example, in the election, I think we need to stand up and say that's not right.
It is interesting that you put this book out at a time when you're up for re-election. Are you taking a risk by doing that, or are you playing in some ways to the antipathy even among Republicans towards Donald Trump? And it is interesting, and it should point out, according to a new poll out today, your approval ratings are around 18% among Arizonans. I'm sorry to point that out, but could this work in your favor?
Anybody who is an incumbent in an off year is going to have poor numbers like this. I think John McCain's, when he was in my position a year out from his election, was something like 30% approval, 56% disapproval, and he ended up winning by double digits in both the primary and the general. So you run elections or campaigns for a reason. Having said that, I think we've got to accomplish something as a Congress, or the people will blame us and say that, hey, they can't get their act together. So in terms of writing the book, it certainly would have been easier to do it after I was safely reelected. but I felt it was important to speak out now. You can always find an excuse not to do what you think you should. I felt that this was important now. It might have election consequences, but I'll deal with those. I think it was important to speak up.
What's been the reaction from your fellow Republicans? We are seeing more members of the party speak out against the president, or at least some of his policies. You know, the transgender issue, the military ban, tweeted out this past week. The immigration ban is another. I'm pushing back on the president's views on Russia sanctions, but what are they saying to you about what you have written?
I think some of that happens being more willing to depart from the president's agenda as you know, the years go on, or as you move further away from the election. So that happens as a matter of course. But if you look in history, in my own case, when President Bush was elected in 2001, that's the year I came to the House of Representatives, and I opposed his signature initiative, No Child Left Behind, and then the prescription drug benefit I voted against. But I was with him on most things, and that's the way I think most senators treat their jobs. Their voters expect them not to be a rubber stamp, but to exercise their own franchise.
Mr. Trump, of course, continues to play to his base, which has been incredibly loyal all along. It was interesting, the latest Quinnipiac poll, as we pointed out, has his approval down to 33%. Mr. Trump's a massive 61% disapproval. Bad news for Republicans who are facing re-election. Do you see more Republicans in Congress distancing themselves from this president? Is there going to be a Republican revolt of sorts?
No, I think it'll be issue by issue. On tax policy, I think Donald Trump, what he's outlined at least, is pretty general Republican orthodoxy. Lower the rates and broaden the base. I think his instincts there are pretty good. So I think you'll find most Republicans supporting him on that. On the immigration thing, for example, that was put out, you know, in the 744 bill, the so-called bipartisan or Gang of Eight bill that we did before, I supported, you know, this way to deal with the merit-based system that they've outlined here, but we didn't cut the numbers in half. And so I would certainly oppose cutting the number of legal immigrants in half, and I think a lot of my colleagues would as well. So it will depend on the issue that the president comes forward with. We'll support him when we think he's right and oppose him when we think he's wrong.
All right, Republican Senator Jeff Flake, you've got the book out. Thanks so much for being with us on the program.
Thanks for having me on.